guys. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we started recording. Today we have lecture number 10. So let's share my screen for now. And for today, we have to continue learning the Django. So we talked about the basic files of the MT project. So today we have to work with the APIs and trying to implement some APIs and to understand the process of the working of the Django project. So for today, so let's go to our file folder. So the examples. Examples web dev 2021, week number 10. And we want to just copy the example from the previous lecture. From the previous lecture, we want to copy the example to the today's one. And inside of the demo, I'm opening the charm PyCharm. I think it's already opened, so I have to just open it like this. So open project, desktop examples, web dev 10, group number 2, demo. And new, I'll put it over here. So this is example from the previous lecture. Example of the previous lecture, which is empty project without anything. So the settings and URLs and WSGI files, they are already understandable. So where is it? Python, my dev. So I want to use the I want to use an environment which is already created for examples, for the lecture examples. That's why this environment will be used for my project. But in your case, you have to create a new one for each new projects. Okay. Python manage Py run server to open our project, but we don't have any migrations yet. So let's open the browser and we have such like a Django application that was run for us. And let's open the next terminal to implement the migrations. So the Python manage Py migrate and sorry. We already implemented. So let's open the admin side. We know about the admin side, and okay, we have. So we have inside of the SQLite file, we have the different type of tables that was already created from these applications. Inside of the settings, we have the variable called installed applications. It's a list of all applications that was created inside of our project. In our case, project called demo, and inside it we have defined such like applications which comes from the Django, and each of them is separate applications. So the structure of the Django project, it can contain different number of applications. So it's if we compare with the Angular side, inside of the Angular application, you might have the different number of components. So in the Django, it's instead of the component, you can use the application and separate the logic of some model. So applications can be somehow called like models. So model called admin, auth, and other models which are already implemented for you and comes from the Django side. And you can create your own applications by yourself. So for now, we don't have any applications. And that's why let's open our slides. For creating a new application, you can use a command. You can use a command like Python manage.py start app. It's the name of the command. And after that, you have to follow it with the name of your application. Just a second. Just like a startup and followed by the name of the application. In our case, let's name it like main application. And after that, you will have this such like a folder which was created for your application. It's just like a component in Angular side. And after creating of the new applications, you have to immediately open the settings.py file and add it inside of the installed apps, your new created application, which is main over here, without any path, just name of the application. It can be recognized, which means over here we have the main and installed app. You have to add this main to connect the new application with your Django project. It's just configuring the new created application should be configured with the Django project, and that's it. So after that, let's see the content of the new application. Inside of the application, we have the one folder by default and other files. The folder, as you can guess, it's just a migrations folder, which means all the changes of the database will be held inside of this folder. We don't have any files here. It's just an empty init file, and that's it. Migrations. Second one is just empty file. The next file is admin.py file, which is used for configuring the admin side, this side of the current application. And next one is apps file, which is configuration of the main configuration of our application, which extends from this main config class, which can also hold the different type of settings of the current application. And next file is models.py file. Models.py file will hold all the classes, all the models of our application. In our case, main application. So tests, by its names, it can be clear that here we have the writing a test for testing some logic, and inside of the views, we have to implement our functions to execute the needed requests. So this is just an empty application without anything. And so from our slides, we have the structure of the working process of the Django application. So in the left side, we have the browser. Instead of the browser, we might see the any platform. It might be iOS mobile phone or Android mobile phone, and mobile applications can also send a request. So it doesn't matter which client will send the request. It might be browser, it might be other platforms, but someone sends the request to our application. So in the web server, we don't have a web server in the file system. So we don't configure the Nginx or other web servers for now because we are working locally. And that's why this request from the browser, from the client, comes into our application. The first meeting this request will be the WSGI server, which is the web server gateway interface, which is over here. This file will be meet this coming request at first. So this file will always, all requests will work with the settings.py file. Inside of the settings.py file, we have the variable called WSJ application, which have to store the information and pass where is location of our WSJ application. And it says demo WSJ and application, demo WSJ, and inside it we have the application variable, which is the gateway application. Using this settings variable, the Django can understand, and this request will be passed to this application. And after that, in between the URLs and WSJ applications, there is a middleware which will just look for over here. So middlewares, this request, our request will hold, will be executed inside of each middleware, and if you want, you can add by yourself own your middlewares to somehow change the form of the request. So for now, it's not necessary. That's why after that, after middlewares, the request will be passed to the URLs by file. So we have here only one URLs by file, and inside it we have to. It's required to to have a variable called URL patterns. It should be list of items. As you can see, it's just a list of items. So each item should be path object. So it's a path. It's a function. It's a function that should be that should have two required arguments as minimum. The first one is pattern. It's a URL. Second one is name of the function or name of the class that should be executed when someone sends a request to this URL. So the task for the URL conf. So how this URLs by file can be found from the Django side. If you open the settings, you will have the variable called root URL conf. And it says inside of the demo, we have the file called URLs without any extension. Pay attention, without any extension. So root URL conf, this variable will be used from the Django side to identify where is location of the URLs by file. And there is here we have the configuration here inside of the settings. And it says it should be looked for inside of this file. And inside of this file, it will just start looping in the URLs patterns list and try to understand coming request URL and the first argument. If it will just trying to match find the matching request for this first part and the request pattern. And after that, for instance, if you are sending a request like admin and this part can be matched, and in that case, it will execute the right side of the function. So if you write something not admin, for instance, admin without n, in that case, it cannot find any URL to execute this pattern. That's why it says 404, which is not found. So let's implement our first own application, so own request. For that, we want to use our new created application. Inside of the new created application, we want to implement simple function. Let it be hello. It's a simple Python function. We want to implement this function when someone sends the request like this. For instance, let it be hi. For instance, localhost and our port. And after that, if someone sends to the hi get request, in that case, I want to implement this hello function inside of the views. So for that, you can use it like this. Inside of the URLs by file, we can add one more path. It says without anything. So if you are writing it like admin, it says admin. If we want to select the path like hi, it should be hi. So I'm saying inside of the configurations, if someone sends a request to the hi pattern, in that case, I want to call some function. Function should be hello inside of the main application. So from main views, I want to import the hello function, which is over here, and implement it here. So we are configuring if someone sends to this pattern some request, we want to execute it inside of this function. From the graph, so we have here URL conf, and after matching the request, it should call appropriate or necessary function inside of the views. So as you can see, if hi, we want to call the hello function inside of the views. And task for the hello function is just depending on the business logic. It should just work with the models if we need, and the model will work with the database and execute some actions, some requests. And if we need, we can use the templates, which means HTML page and so on. And after executing some business logic, it should just return the response for the needed web server, and web server will respond it to the browser. The browser might be, I will say again, it might be any client. It doesn't matter. It might be browser, it might be on any other platform. Okay, but from the URL side, if URL side will match this request, so this pattern from the request, so it will call this function, and the rule is it will automatically add at the first argument the coming request. So request, which is over here. So I'm sending a request for now. I'm sending a request for now, and this request object will be passed as the first argument always. For all functions, the request argument will be passed as the first argument. And after that, the task for the view side is just execute something and return the response. So response should be HTTP response. So that's why from Django, from HTTP model, I want to import the HTTP response class, which is super pattern, so the parent class for all responses that will be executed and that will be implemented in a Django application. It doesn't put a new models or new version of the Django. It doesn't matter. At the end, all the responses will be extended from this class. So this class will extend from the base class, which will also have their the different needed functions and needed options. So this class will be returned as a result. So the hello view function response. Okay. So what we are doing inside of the URL, we are calling this function, and this function will take as a first argument implicitly so the request, and without anything, we just returning the response for this URL. And as you know, we are already run our application. And why it says the manage by? Okay, run server, and after sending the request to the hi, you will have our response that we passed over this view function. So we are working using only two files, URL file and our views file. If someone sends to the hi, you will have the such like a response. This response can be anything. In our case, it's just a string value. And if it's HTML content, it will also render the HTML content of the result of the response. It depends on your task. So in this case, you can use some templates here. For instance, templates that was markup like using the HTML page and return it as a HTML response, and it will just render it in the browser in our case. And that's it. That's it. Very basic logic of the working process of the Django. But one thing, so we are working with the main application, and we want to call the hello function from the main. So let's imagine we have the 10 number of applications, main and other applications, other 9 applications, and all the URLs. If we write inside of the URL spy, which is very common for all of the application, it will be very messy. So it cannot be understandable for debugging or for other things. That's why it's perfect, and it's recommended to separate the URLs of the applications in their own applications. For instance, inside of the main, I want to create a file called also URLs. So manually, I created this file. So inside of this file, so let's import Django URLs import path, and we said about the inside of the URLs by file there should be the variable called URL pattern by default, and it should be the list patterns. It's a list of patterns. That's why patterns is required, and this name cannot be changed. So inside of the URLs by file, always should be such like a variable. And inside it, you can implement and you can use all the needed URLs of this application, for instance, of the main application. So we are just isolating our application without any other dependencies. So it means if you have the new application, so the new Django project, and this application is already implement some functionality, and you can just copy this folder and put it inside of the second Django project, and it should, after some little configuration, it should work. And for that, I have to somehow isolate all the logic of this application inside it. Okay, that's why let's copy this, our high pattern inside of the URL patterns inside of the main. Well, for that we want to from main. So from main views, we want to import the hello, and that's it. So we created a new file URLs. Inside it, we imported the function, and we described the URL patterns, and hi will be executed this response. But if you run it again, it says we cannot find such like a URL. Why? Because we created a own file, and Django by default, by settings, sees only this URLs by file, which is a common for all of our applications. And inside it, you have to somehow include this file inside of the main URLs by file. For that, we have the include function. Include function. When you want to include the number of URLs, you can use the include one. So path include. We're saying the main inside of the main application. I have the file called URLs, and the Django understands that this file will hold the URL patterns, and all the patterns inside of this list will be added to this main URLs by file. And after that, you will see the result as you expected. If it's not exist, it says there is no such like a URL, and we have only these two options: the admin and or high. But if you have this high URL inside of the other application, like main, but we have the other applications, and inside it we also have the high. In that case, you have to somehow differentiate between these two requests. That's why it's recommended to add the prefix. For the all variables, so for all URLs inside of our application. So we're saying for all URLs inside of this file, which means for all these files, we want to add a prefix like main, which means hi will not work anymore. It says it should be main, and inside it hi. As you can see, for all files, for all URLs inside it, we added the prefix main. And that's it. And it is very understandable. If you have other applications, you can also include them there and add the prefixes. And using the prefixes, it can be understandable for other developers also. So, any questions for now? Guys? Okay. Okay, if there are no questions, so we have to continue. So about this graph, we already understood. So About the difference between the Django 1 and 2, for now we have the Django 3 also. So the Django 1 and 2 in the URLs module, we have the changes. So in the Django 1, we have function called URL. And we're using a Django number 2. And in Django number 2, we have the path function. Path function. And inside of the path function, you can use regular expression also. So when to match the pattern, you can use a regular expression. In our case, without any characters, we say that this HI character should be matched for our request. And in that case, we will execute this function. And for the using inside of the Django 2, to use a regular expression, you have to use a repass function. Repass function to implement it. So for regular expression, all the characters that should be executed from other subjects, you have to know about them. And also you can read about them under this link. And the process of working of the Django, we are talking about it again. So after running the server, it will look to the settings file and to this variable to get the entry point of the all URLs. And after that, it will just try to match the coming request URL and the URLs of the settings inside of the application. Look through all the URLs patterns and compare. So it should start from this file and look through all the URLs inside it and try to compare and match it. And after matching, it will just call the function and HTTP request object as a first parameter, as we did before here. Inside it, if hi will be matched, it will call the hello function from the views and immediately pass the first argument request, which is a HTTP request object. HTTP request object over here from Django, HTTP request, HTTP request. This object, this variable is a instance of this class. This object will be passed as a first argument. And view function responsible to return the HTTP response, as we did here. If it's something like 1 or 2, it cannot be executed because HTTP, so the browser or our application expects HTTP response as a returning part of the view function. Okay. I think it's clear. So if it is not executed, so if we don't have such like a variable, in that case, you will have the page number 404, which is not found. So about the URLs patterns. So let's try to understand it. And we talked about the Django version number 2. In the second version, we have to use a repass to use the regular expression. It means regular expression. Let it be, so from the slides we have the time plus. So the time plus, and inside the views we want to implement some function. So let it be show time. Show time first argument always will be the request, and returning one. So the current time. So we want to import the date from date time. Import date time, and date time now will be the current time, and we want to return the HTTP response. So HTTP response, and inside it, let's copy this one. Let's copy this one, but we want to show the such like a variable time and something, and we want to use a string builder, and inside it the current time. So this function will just get the current time from the Django, and will return the HTTP response with the time and the current time variable over here. So I want to use this function, this show time function over here. If someone sends the time plus in that case, I want to execute this function, and it should return the needed data. So let's test it. So what was here? The time and plus. So as you can see, we have the such like a result for after refreshing the page, you will have the different name of seconds and minutes and so on for the current time. Okay, and inside of this function, we have this simple execution, simple logic of the function. But we might have, as we used repass, inside of this URL, you can use a different number of executions. For instance, \d means digits, 1 digit. If you put a plus sign, it means number of digits. It means if you are running like plus, it cannot be found because it requires the number after the plus. If you send a 1, it should be executed. If you send a 100, it should be also executed. If you send a like this number, it also executed. Why? Because we are saying that match URL should be time plus, and after that it should be number, and number should be infinity. So if you are typing like number 2, so only 2-digit numbers, in that case this URL can be executed, but we skip it this ending slash. If you adding the ending slash, in that case this URL cannot be matched. Why? Because it says time plus and only 2 digits, and after that it should be closed, it should be ended, but we don't have here 2 digits. If you are typing like 10, it should be executed, and 99 it should be executed. 100 it cannot be executed. Why? Because it's a 3 number digit. So like this you can create your own patterns and own executions for the needed values. For instance, from the slides we have 1, 2, so which means 1 and 2, starting from 1 until the 99 will be executed. And if you have the 100, it cannot be executed, which means if you put it like this, these numbers cannot be executed again, anymore. And for the getting this number from the URL, for instance, we have, let it be 99, let it be 1. For getting this number from the URL and passing it to the our function, you have to put a parenthesis, which means you have to group it. As you know, if you're adding the parenthesis around the regular expression, it means from this URL, it should just group and extract that number from the regular expression. And this extracted number will be passed as a second argument to this function, which means hours. Let it be hours. It's just the name of the variable, and we want to just print out hours. And here we have the terminal. If you refresh it again, you will have here the print number hours, which is a 1 over here from the URL we have inside of the view function. So for the purpose of this function should be somehow to add these numbers to the current time. Let it be so let it be show where is the combine? Okay, we can use, I think we can use from we can use time. Okay, time delta. We can use the time delta function. Can be used for adding the date time. Now we'll return the current date time, and we want to add time delta. And inside of the time delta, we have to pass. We can pass anything. We can pass, for instance, years, we can pass days, we can pass hours, and so on. For instance, in our case, we want to add some hours to the current time. So time delta, hours, these hours, and the current time will be added. Supported type for time delta hours string. So hours in our case, as we extract it from the URL, it becomes as a string. That's why we want to convert it to the integer. So it says it cannot be passed as the integer here. That's why, okay, as you can see. So let's open the settings. So Almaty time zone. So Almaty. And as you can see here, so by default, the time zone is UTC, and in UTC we have the 6 a.m. 6 a.m. for the current time, which is 11 for us, 11:50. 11:50 for us, and it is a UTC time. But for us, the time zone should be Asia and Almaty. And Django understands and to know about the time zones. List of time zones you can find in the list of the documentation. So for us, if you are passing the 0 times, it's the current time. It's 11:56, 53. If you are passing the some number, for instance, 2 hours, which means after 2 hours, just adding the 2 hours for the current time. Like this, you can extract the needed data from the URL using the regular expression, passing it to the functions inside of the views. So I think this is clear. So any questions for now? Okay, if you don't have any questions, so we have to continue. We have to continue learning and continue implementing some URLs. So demo URL can be closed. So I want to implement a function called product list. So let's return some HTTP response here. So list of products. The second one is, so we discussed about the to-do app inside of the Angular side in Angular lectures. It's just the same thing, but the object is just products. The second function, which is a detailed object of the current selected item. So the product detail page. These two functions I want to use inside of the URLs. Inside of the URLs, I want to use, first one is products. It's just a list of products. And for that, I want to use product list function. Let's test it. Products. And as you can see, it works. And I want to add one more thing. Products by the rules of REST, it should be somehow some number, isn't it? Some number like this number should be after the product to select the one item. And you can use your regular expression like this, but inside of the path, we have already created a variable, data type variables in the URLs. For that, you can use such like a syntaxes called integer and the name of the variable that should be passed to the function. In our case, product ID, which means products. And after that, if we have the some number, this number can be executed. And if you have the some number, this number will be passed to this. So to this detail function. So detail function the tail function as a name like product ID. And after opening this file, accept the request, you have to get the value like product ID from the URL. So here we don't have any name. That's why this hours was created for us. It can be so this variable can be anything. So the name of the variable, it doesn't matter. It can be anything because in the URLs we don't have the name of the variable. But in this case, in the path case, the integer means it's already implemented for you the regular expression to getting the integer numbers in the URL, and after the columns you have to, and you can pass the name of the variable that should be passed to the function, and the name is over here. Just like 1 second. So guys, sorry. Okay, let it be like a break for our lectures. So let's continue. Okay, we talked about the name, so the arguments of the URL that should be extracted from the data from the URL. So the product, let it be like F, and here we have the product ID. So product list over here, and product list some number, and product detail page will be opened if you send a request like products and the ID of the product. Depending on the product ID, you will have the extract the needed data and show the result. Okay, I think this is also clear. And for now, we want to implement. So we want to simulate our database, and that we have the number of products in the browser. So we want to create a list of objects. List of objects. In one object, I will have the ID number, and will that be the name of the product. So product 1, and would that be the price of the product? That be the 1000. And this list will be returned when we have the list of products. If I'm sending the request like this, I want to render in this URL the list of products. If you remember, we have this placeholder, JSON placeholder, which you use in the Angular site application. So it says, in our case, it's a localhost / posts, and it should return the list of posts like this. I have the extension in the browser, that's why it should somehow show in beautiful format. I think it's just a JSON builder. I think like this, the name of the extension called, and that can be installed in the Chrome, and you will have such like a pretty good showing the items in the browser. So we want to, and we are trying to implement the same thing like this. See, if I am sending the request like products, I want to see the list of products from the somewhere. Okay, I have here list of objects. That would be only 2 objects for now. And for returning the JSON objects, in our case, it's a JSON object. For the returning the JSON response for the function, there is a class called JSON response. JSON response is a simple class which extends from this HTTP response class. If you open it, you can see that it should just extend from the HTTP response, and one more extra argument will be passed here, like content type, which is application JSON, and that's it. This is also just the extension of this HTTP response, adding this one feature to showing the result in the JSON format. JSON response, and we want to return the posts. Well, or not posts, it's the products, which is created over here. And JSON response expects one object, one dictionary as an argument. As we are sending a list of objects, we have to pass the second argument called save, which should be equals to false. By default, it's equals to true, and it will expect one object. If it's not one object, it will just throw the error. That's why it should be save equals to false. And that's it. Let's reload it. And as you can see, we have the 2 products which we created over here, the list of products like this. But we have the same ID, which is not correct for us. That's why let's create like list of items using the for loop. So for I in range 1 and 10, and instead of I we want to 1, we want to use I, the name of the variable will be also the product I, and I multiplied by 1000 will be the list of products. And if you refresh, you will have the such like products with the different IDs, incremented IDs, and the names and the price also. So as you can see, it is almost the same thing as we use in the Angular side. So we are trying to somehow implement such like a functionality that at the end we have to connect the Angular application and your Django application. Okay, we have this list of products. We have in this URL, we have the list of products in JSON format. And in the Angular side, after getting the list of products, it should be somehow listed the needed products in the items. And after that, someone selects the some product. For instance, someone selects the product number 3. In that case, in Angular side will be opened the product detail page with the ID number 3. And in that page, Angular site will send a request like this order. Product, Angular says, give me some extra data for the product with the ID number 3. In that case, you have to return not list of objects, but one object for the product with ID number 3, which is over here, which is product ID over here. And for that, we want to just looking for the needed item. So if product ID in this list, this ID equals to product ID from the URL, in that case, we want to return the JSON response for the one product. As you can see, we have one product, which is one object, and we don't need to send a save false argument over here. And if we are looking for some ID inside of the array, but we cannot find any ID with the appropriate ID, in that case, we want to return also the JSON response. And in the response, we want to give some message. So the product not found with selected ID. And that's it. And if you refresh it, you will have the project ID. So the product ID with the number 3. Number 10, it says product cannot be found and select for the selected ID. Why? Because inside of the list, if you see the last argument, last object is with the number 9, which means 9 is executable, but more than 9, we don't have any variable. That's why it sends also the response as the JSON format, not the HTML page. For instance, if you are just leaving this part, you will have such like an error, which is not comfortable and not executable from the Angular side. So that's why this part is very critical. So if we cannot find any product with this set ID, in that case, we somehow respond the needed message. But this page cannot be executed from the Angular or from the mobile phone, from anything. And that's why after adding this response, this return means we finished the looking for this array and we cannot find anything. If we found, we just immediately stop our function and returning the response. And in that case, you will have such like a message, which is also a dictionary and which is also comfortable for executing from the Angular side. And this message will be somehow showed in the alert message and so on, in the message box and so on. Okay, I think this is also clear. Any questions, guys?
Yes, how we can pass status code for the response?
So status codes will be, so you can open the HTTP response and see which number of variables and which number of data can be passed to this HTTP response. In that case, we have only content and args and quarks. Content is just the data that should be return it as a response. And inside of the HTTP response base, you can see the different type of headers. For instance, here I have the different type of data, and one of them here should be it should be the status. For instance, by default, it returns status number status if it returns correctly. In our case, it should be status number 200, isn't it? So it have to be status number 200. If someone sends the not executable ID, in that case, status should be somehow the bad request or bad ID. In this case, we cannot see in the status code here. You can see in the networks. In the networks, after sending the request from the Angular side, and if you're running the like this, you can also see the message, but we cannot see the response. And a little bit later, when I am talking about the client side sending a request, in that case, you can see this status codes of the response from the postman that will show a little bit later. Okay. Any other questions?
For what we set safe to false?
So again, this JSON response of the class will expect the dictionary. So dictionary means our one object. JSON response expect dictionary, and if you are sending a dictionary, we can skip this save function, save attribute. So as you can see here, JSON response over here, we are sending only products, which means product, only one product. One product means one object. And in that case, you can skip the save false variable. But when we are rendering the list of items, we are sending a list of objects, which is not object, not dictionary, it's a list. It's a different collection. And that's why for the other types except the dictionary, you have to set a save false, because it will expect, as you can see, save instance, the data that you passed should be instance of the dictionary. And if it's not dictionary, you have to save as false, which means this if condition will be skipped. This if you are sending a not dictionary. For instance, if you are sending a list of items without any save, you'll have such like a dictionary. It says, in order to allow non-dictionary objects to be serializable, set the save parameter to the false. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So that's why we have to pass the save parameter to the true, or sorry, false, if you are sending a list of something not dictionary. Okay. Okay. So URLs is okay. So for now, it's time to start the new application. So the Python managed by start app, and the next application will be the core. The name of the application will be the core, and as you can see, it's created and immediately open the settings and add the core application inside of the installed apps. Okay, and after that, it's enough to configuring. And inside of the core, we also need to create a URLs by file. Let's copy the URLs from the main, and let's copy the functions from the views also to from the main. Inside of the core application, we want to implement the same result as before, but using the database. So inside of the URLs, we can skip this. So as you can see, we don't need from the main. We have to, from the core views, which means from this file, we want to use product list and product detail. So this can be removed. we can also be removed. So these functions located inside of the core views. So datetime, other things can be also skip it like this. HTTP response also don't need. Okay, what we want to do is, so we created a URL inside of the core application, and to include these all URLs inside of the main URL by file, you have to open it and do it the same as before, but the prefix will be the core. And we want to import the core URLs. Inside of the core, we have the URLs by file, and the all URLs inside this file will be included and added prefix like core, which means you have to work with the core for now. But we don't need, we don't have any, so we don't have any products yet. That's why it returns the error. So before the showing the result from the models, so I want to show the same result, but not from the browser, from the Postman. So at your home, you have to install the client, which is a program which is called the Postman. Postman will help us to save our requests and structured requests to pass them to other developers. Our API, our RESTful API, will be stored inside of the Postman. So you'll have such like interface. In the left side, we'll have the collections, APIs, and so on. So we'll work inside of the collections and environments. Other things you can just skip for now. So inside of the collections, you can create a new one, a new collection, which means new folder. You can think about it like a folder. So from the first group we already created for this course, which is the web development 2021 spring and week number 10. So let it be a new folder for your group. So the week number 10 G2. So we created a new folder, and inside of this folder we want to create a new request. New request will be like so the list of product list. So let's copy this URL, pass it over here, and after creating a new request, in this drop-down list, you can select the needed HTTP method that you want to send to this URL. In our case, it's just a get method or post or other methods. So getting the result, for getting the products, you have to send a get request. And on the right side, send method will send button will send the get request to this URL. In the bottom side, you have the different tabs. In different tabs, you have the options for passing your params, for instance, for passing params for the URL. Depends on you. And in authorization, you can select the needed authorization for this URL, the headers, passing some headers and body. And about it, we will talk a little bit later. But for now, it's enough to sending the request, so the get request to this URL. After clicking to the send button, you will have the result like this as we get from the browser, but we have here the response, status codes, the timing, and so on, or all other stats of the current request will be showed over here. So let's duplicate it and do it for showing detail page of the current product. For instance, product number 1. And you will have one item. You will have one item over here, product number 10. As you can see, the message that we got from the server and our status code that we set over here. As you remember, it's over here. If we don't found anything, status code should be the 400, which is over here, which is a bad request. Okay, you see? And depending on the status code, the Angular site will show the alert in the different colors. For instance, if it's 200, it would be green message that was successfully something done, And if it's not 200, in that case, it would be the in red color some message which is should be somehow showed like this. Okay, I think this is also clear. So like this, you can save your requests, and using these requests, other developers, in our case, we expect that the Angular developers can see your request and test it for their needs. One more thing, in the environments part, you can create your own environment, and inside of the environment can be created different number of variables, static variables. In our case, I'm using the base URL. It's the name of the variable, and the variable stores such like a string. It's a HTTP localhost and our port, which will be the locally run our Django application. And using this variable, I can do such like a things. 2 times curly brackets and the name of the variable after selecting the environment over here. As you can see here, the list of environments that was created over that was created here will be available. One of them you can select it, and after that you can see the variables inside of this environment, which means localhost and this port will be under the name base URL. And as you can see, base URL, and after that, main products. If you send the request again, it will be the same result, because base URL will be replace it for your with your value inside of the environment. It's very useful because after deploying your application to some machine or to other machine, if you want to check these URLs in the remote computer, in that case, you have to just change the environment variable for the prod, for instance, and in that case, instead of the local host will be some IP address and some other ports and so on. It doesn't matter, but without any changes of the URL, you can select and change check your APIs. It's a very useful, and you have to do like this: base URL and the same result as before. Okay, I think this is clear. But for now, we have already created the core application, and inside of the URLs we added the core prefix for the all core application URLs, which means in these URLs we have the main prefix. So inside of the folder you can also separate them like subfolders. Let it be the main application requests over here. Like selecting a drag and drop, you can put it inside of the folders, which means inside of the main application I have such like URLs. Let's duplicate it and let it be core. And inside of the core application, I have the same URLs, but prefix will be the core. And that's it. And after sending the request like this, you will have the error because we don't have implemented yet. So I think this is clear. And what we want to do now is we want to show you how can we work with the models inside of the Django application. So by default, it will import from Django DB the model called models that should be used for our Django models. Models is just a Python classes. Let it be class called product. If it's like this, it's just a Python class without any extending without any other things. But for the Django, for understanding of the Django, the Python classes should be somehow the representation of our tables in the database. So that's why you have to extend from the model class, which locates inside of the models package. This model class will hold all the needed functions and executions for working with the database. So after that, after extending from this models.model, your class, which is a product class, will be assumed like a table in the database. But we don't have any explicitly set columns, but we have implicitly inside of the model, we have already a column called ID. It's a primary key column, which is a number, ID, which is after incremented column. If you are extending from this model, by default, it will just add one column, which is the primary key ID. And all other columns you can put as the properties of that class. Let it be name. When you're describing the name, you have to say which data type should be this column in the database. For that, inside of the models, you have the different type of fields. In the name, we know that it's a char field, and in the database will be it's a varchar. And in the Python, in the Django, we have the char field method that can be used for this data type. And inside it, we have different options. For instance, maximum length ought to be 300, which means we want to create a table called product, and we have to add one more column called name, and the maximum number is 300. Let it be price, model, float, float field. Let it be default equals to 0. So not in columns, sorry. So just a second, guys. Okay, let's continue, guys. Okay, we are describing our table. Table by default we set about the ID column, which is auto incremented, and the primary key. And after that, we have the column name with the char field, column price with the float field. In other words, you can think about it like this. After creating such like a class, you can think that after executing the migrations, everything, this class will be converted to the like create table. So we are creating a table inside of the core application. That's why it should add core prefix to your table. Core product. Let it be ID integer. So integer, which is a name, varchar, the maximum number is 300. We set it like this. So the price, which is a number, so the default value is equals to 0. So such like a request from the SQL request will be generated from the Django when you run the migrations for this class. So let's comment this line. Okay. I think this is clear. The name price, which is also understandable for us. Okay. So let's check it again. So the core added. So if you skip it, this one, all your migrations cannot be work because Django cannot understand that you have the application called core. Even you have the folder over here. To identify this application, you have to add it to the install tabs because when you are running a command, it will just start from this list and try to find the difference between your application and between the database. So if you open the database, we have such like a tables which were created from these applications. From these applications, we have the migrations, and those migrations will create such like a tables. But for now, we have one more thing, so the one more class of product, which extends from the model, which means it should be synchronized with the database, and we don't have any table for this class. That's why to migrate, to create a database migrations, we have the two functions, two commands. For checking, we have almost the many commands, but for checking the migrations, you can use a column, or so the command called the Python manage by show migrations. Show migrations says in admin application inside of this admin application, we have two migrations and they are already implemented, which means this X sign will says that this is migration is already implemented. This is just the name of the files. Inside of the auth application, this migration is also executed. And content type and so on, sessions also. But inside of the core and main application, we don't have any migrations yet. That's why no migrations. This is our show migration command to see which migrations was executed or which migrations were just skipped. Okay, the main two commands will be like this: Python manage by make migrations. So the make migrations. This command will start looking for all applications inside of this list and try to compare with the database. For instance, inside of the admin, we don't have any change in the Python side and in the database, and it will just be skipped. And for all other things. And inside of the main, we don't have any model. It means it should be also skipped. And inside of the core, this command, inside of the core, it will just identify that inside of the models we have the class which extends from this class, which extends from the model class. It means it should be created inside of the database, such like a table, if it's the first time. And if you run it, you'll have such like a message. It says in core application, there was created a create model product migration. And if you open this folder, you will have the first migration over here, which is the initial migration without any dependencies, which means it will not wait other other migrations. And it says it should be created a model called product with such like columns. As you can see, ID was automatically added from this superclass. ID, which is a primary key and so on, and the name and price, which we set it from the model description. So the maximum length, which is 300 and so on, the default one is, and after that, this file was created using this command. But inside of the database, we don't have any changes yet. To show if you show the migrations again, if you show the Python show migrations, you can see that inside of the core we have migration, but not implemented yet, without any X. Okay, to implement it, to apply these changes, to apply this migration in the database, you have to call the next column. Manage by migrate. It's the second very common command for applying the needed migrations in the database. And it says applying the core and this file. It says, okay, it means it was created the needed table in the database. And if you refresh it, you will have such like a table. Core product. Why core? Because we is located inside of the core application, and the prefix will be added also automatically. And if you open it, you will have the three columns: ID, name, and price. I think this is clear. And all the changes inside of the model will be also tracked with the migrations and with the files, and so with these files and so on. Okay, so what we need for now, we want to implement inside of the product list. We want to get the list of products from the database, which means select all from core product. So this type of request we want to send to the database and get the needed data from the database and show it from to the response. So not implementing it like the static array that was created over here. But we want to know, but we want to work with the database. For that, we have our model, which is a product model. Inside of the Python Django ORM, object relationship model, we have different type of useful functions. One of them is so products will be so products. We are importing the core, models, and product. And inside of the product, we have the object called property called objects. And this product.objects means we are selecting all data inside of the database, all the rows inside of the database table, and function called all. And this part of the code will be converted to such like a SQL request. And we are just sending a SQL request like this to getting all data from the database. But we are working with our Python class. Python class objects, all it should understand that Python class in the database stored as a table core products, and it will send a request like this. And this request, we want to return it to the front side as a response. And if you send this request, you will have such like an error. It says object of type query set is not JSON serializable. And if you print out products that you have from the database, if you are sending it again, you can see that the query set is empty because we don't have any items in the database. So let's open the database, and we're going to add the name product. So product number 1, price, let it be the 1000. And how can I apply? I want to apply. Okay, here I have. So here I have the adding the new item to the data to the core input. It says insert into core products name and price, which is over here. Okay, let's run it again. So send it again. And in this case, you will have query set with one object. One object, which is in the database, will have one product as we added right now. But this is just a list. It's not a simple list of the Python list like in our case here. Here we have only Python list, which is a simple Python list, can be converted to the JSON and can be returned. But in this case, in our database case, products suggest a list of query set. Query set cannot be showed in the response. That's why we have to convert each product to the dictionary. For that, we want to create a function called toJSON inside of the class, which returns object. ID, it's the self ID. We know about it. So ID column is already exists inside of the product because we are extending from this class. The next one is name, which is a self name. Next one is price, self price. So this function for any object of the product, if you are calling this function, it will just return the simple dictionary, simple object, Python object. So inside of the list, we want to create a products JSON equals to for product inside of the products. I want to loop over this query set objects, and for each object, I want to call toJSON function, which means from this query set, I want to get list of objects. So if you print out products JSON for now, if you send it again, you will have such like a simple dictionary as we did inside of the main application. But we are taking it inside from the database and converting it to the JSON, and that's it. And you can just return this one to the front side. And as you can see, you can select the different types of the returning parts. The pretty one will show the pretty JSON object. As you can see here, we have the product one from the database. So from the database, converting it to the JSON and sending it back. Same thing for the returning part of the selected item. So let's implement it. We have product ID. And we want to get one item from the table. For that, we have try except block. Inside of the try, we want to get a product, which means from the products table, from the objects, we have the function called get. Get function will expect the property that properties that can be available for current table. For current table, we have 3 columns: ID, name, and price. Using either each of them or all of them, you can select the product. For instance, in our case, we want to ID should be equals to product ID. In other words, it would be like this: select all from core product, where ID equals to product ID that you passed here. This request will be implemented when we are using such like a ORM function. I think this is also clear. So we are trying to get such like a product, but this ID can be invalid, and we cannot. There might be a case where when we cannot find any product with this ID. In that case, we want to show the exception, so that does not exist exception as E. Let's change alias like E, and return the JSON response also using the message as before. Message will be just a string format of the E that was from the from this try catch exception, and status should be somehow the 400, which is a bad request. You cannot send such like a request. If everything is okay, it means try can find a product with the selected item. In that case, we want to just return the JSON of the product and to JSON. Why? Because we have to convert it to the JSON format, and that's it. If you are skipping the status attribute, by default it will be the 200, which is everything is okay. So it's a list of items, and here I have the one item, which is 200. If it's a 10, we have this message: product matching request matching query does not exist. This message comes from this exception. Exception because I'm putting here. So I'm putting here the message from this exception and converting it to this string. And as you can see, the bad request status code comes for this request. If it's a 1, it will return the 1 object. If it's a list, it will return the list, but we have only 1 object inside it. So to manage our data for this newly created table, for instance, product table, you can use admin side. So in our case, admin side, we don't have any products yet. So inside of the admin, let's import our model from core application. Inside of the models file, we have the class called product, which is our model. So for today, it's enough to just register to the admin side this model. Admin side register product. These 2 lines, almost the 1 line, will add, almost the 1 line will add the functionality of working with the products model inside of the Django admin side. If you refresh it, you can see that core, it's the name of the application. It's the name of the application. And inside it, we have the model or table called products. If you open it, you can see the 1 product that was added before. Let's add 1 more product. So product number 2, that will be 2000, and save it. Save it again. So the product number 3, 2000 or 3000. Add another product number 4, 4000, and save it. So we have, edit continue. Okay, so we have the free and adding the new one 4,000 and adding to using this button, you can add the next without any refreshing the page. 500. And we have the 5 products in the database. You can check it inside of the database also. As you can see here, we have the 5 database objects. And when we have this functionality, this manipulation, and this functionality of the managing of the products table was added only using the one line for our model. And after that, if someone admins, for instance, added a new product to our system, and our clients, it might be Angular or it might be mobile apps, will take them all after adding to the database. For instance, product number 5, product number 6 we don't have yet. That's why it will be the result as a false. And that's it. That's it for implementing and for working with the database, for getting the results from the list of items and for getting one item from the table. So any questions for now, guys?
What is the name of JSON extension for browser?
So let's show it. So where's the extensions? So more tools, extensions. So JSON view. So JSON view, where is it? I think over here. This one. So I will pass it over like this. Okay, if you disable it, you will have such like a not highlighting the data, not highlighting the result. And this type of the result you will have if you don't have such like extension. So just a pretty one that will just add the beautiful rendering the JSON objects. Okay, other questions? So I want to show one more thing here. Let's add one more column to the product table. Let it be description. Models will have the text field, and the difference between a char field and text field. Char field it's just a fixed number of chars. Inside of the text field, we can also set a maximum length, but text field can store more chars and more. It can be somehow says that it should be the text area, whereas the char field is just the input text, and that's a difference between these two values. And default value for the description will be let it be the empty string. So I changed our model, but inside of the table we don't have any columns for the description. That's why I have to run 2 commands again. First one is manage by make migrations. Make migration says add field description to products. If you open this folder, you will have the second file. And the second file depends from the first file. Like this, you can store all the sequence, all the paths, all the trace of your migrations. So the second file cannot be implemented before the first file. Why? Because second file tries to add for the existing model the new column. That's why depends for the first model is empty because it's the initial one. The second one is depends from the core first file, which is for over here. And it says we want to add new item to the new column to the product table. And the second command is migrate it. And after that, you can check it, and description is added, and with default value is empty. And description, let it be here, description value to the JSON, and you will have the one more field here. For instance, if you are changing some credentials of the columns, for instance, name, maximum length becomes from the 300 to the 200. You have to also run two commands. Make migrations. It says alter field the name of the product. It says we want to change the name of the product to the maximum length should be the 200. And the next command is just apply these migrations to the database. And that's it. And you can show migrations, shows all the migrations that was implemented and that was applied. Inside of the core, we have the free migrations, and all of them already implemented. And the last one extends, as you can see from the second one. Like this, we can create like some queue of the migrations. Okay, for today, this is enough. So let's see our slides. So inside of the slides, coding order, the new app. This is MPT, also can be configuring of the database. So let's see. Inside of the settings, in settings file, we have configuration of database. By default, it's configured as a SQLite. Inside, for the configuring the database, we have such like variables. There might be such like variables like database engine, name of the database, the user and password who has the ability to work with this database, host and port. Host and port by default it's not provided. Why? Because we are working locally. If somehow you deploy your project in one machine and your database located in the other machines, in that case you can set the host like IP address of that machine, and the port also, user and database also will be the appropriate data for connecting to that database. And for database engine, in our case, it will be the SQLite, and it's configured by default. But if you need, you can change it to the different type of other versions of the relational databases. For instance, SQLite for first version, second version. Inside of the settings, you have to you have to show the engine to these classes, to these models. MySQL, SQLite, which is already implemented. So the MS SQL and Oracle and so on. So these configurations can be done inside of these settings. So they show for when we are creating a model Python class, it creates a table inside of the database. And make migration, applying to the migrate. So for saving and so create instance of model and save. Okay, about it a little bit later. So this is a list of products, getting the product, and that's it. So any questions, guys? Okay, guys, questions from your side? So examples, web dev 10, and here I want to upload. So the Postman collection. So I uploaded Postman collection to the GitHub repository. from that file, you can import it, and so you can just doing like import and selecting your file. For instance, this was okay. I already saved in the needed file. So here we have. So this file can be imported to your collection, to your Postman, and it will be automatically created over here. I have already exist. That's why it cannot be. So if I'm deleting it, so let's delete it, and you don't have any collections yet, and importing that file will import all the views, all the requests that was saved inside of this collection. Like so, you can pass your all the created APIs to the other developers to work with the in-group. Okay, questions, guys?
When will you upload Lab 8 and when we start our project?
So project you have to, so I think today the date is 3rd April. So today will be the announcement about your project. So I think you already filled your, I have to check it, filled your tables. So where is the project? So here I have the projects. And you have to start discussing your project with your assistant. And so we talked about it, that you have to separate your projects with your practice lessons. So even we have more than 2 assistants here. For my group, for instance, on Saturday from 4 until the 6 p.m., there should be only about the 40 students and 2 assistants. Please check it again, and today until the 9 p.m. there is a time to change your timetable over here, because you have to separate your groups by why it's copied. You copy, you have to delete it. So you have to separate your groups by your practice lesson. So there is no lecture lessons. You have to practice lessons, and you have to separate the groups and fill the forms using the practice lessons. So here I have the 12 groups with the 3 students. We have almost the 60 or 33 students here. Almost the 3, and there is correct. Core webs is correct, and there is need other groups. There should be almost about the 40 students, and our students also should be somehow separate to other groups, because I think how many students I have in practice lesson. So let's see. So we have 35 students for my group from the 4th Saturday. So overall for this table, here should be the 35 students as maximum. That's why please check it again, your timetable, and to change your group for the suitable tab. And start implementing your front-end side of your project after discussing with your assistant. And if you have the question after discussing with your assistant, you can discuss it with me.
Deadline for next lab will be Friday.
Deadline for the next lab will be, I think it will be in Thursday or for Wednesday, isn't it?
Yes, but there are no groups that defend the lab in Wednesday now.
Really? Okay. In that case, I will discuss with the assistant. In that case, we'll change deadline to the Friday. I think it will be enough for you. If all of you, if you are defending it on Saturday, the deadline will be changed to the Friday. I will discuss with the assistants.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions regarding to today's lecture? I already uploaded our today's examples to the GitHub. You can find the GitHub link from the Teams channel. Any other questions, guys? So if there is no question, I have